My name is Carleigh Schoenleber, and I am an assistant visiting lecturer at Wheaton College currently. I'm pleased to present my research to you today on teachers and technology integration and coaching the technology reluctant teacher was the term that we gave them. The goals for my presentation today are to provide you some background information on what technology integration is. We're all way more familiar with it now than we were, just 2 years ago. Provide some background information about this peer coaching research study, and then present to you my findings from the technology integration and peer coaching research study, and then provide some applications for you as educators during this ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. So just providing you a little bit of background information, what the research says. And we all are way more familiar with this now, but technology is transient. It's constantly changing. I would venture to guess even the tools that you're using now are different than when we first headed into this pandemic technology integration situation. There's also a term that was used in my research a lot, which is called technology reluctance. And what I mean by that is we were studying some teachers that were hesitant to integrate technology. They had a lot of resources provided for them, but they were nervous and unwilling to kind of take some risks. And some of this research was actually conducted pre-COVID, but has way more application now post-COVID or during COVID. Educators already pressed for time had the expectation to, stay on top of what's going on in the technological world and integrate it into their instruction. And this research actually said that the technology tools, the proficiency that you need with them doubles every 18 months. So you can only imagine that has probably accelerated now where we are. So we found that new technology integration can feel overwhelming, and teachers tend to retreat to what they know. I think we can all relate to that when we're learning something new or presented with an educational change. And that technology integration can be really challenging. And it doesn't matter how many years of experience you've had, whether that's higher ed or in the classroom. When something's new and when something is different and you're unaware, it can present a very high level of challenge. So I found as I researched that there was a wide range of comfort levels with technology, and teachers' background experiences and personal philosophies had a direct impact on if they integrated technology at all, and then how they did it. So there was a positive correlation between someone that had a positive belief that technology made a difference in their classroom and then how they integrated their technology. So I was in a building at the time, I'm in higher ed now, but was classroom teaching at the time, that had all these technology resources. And I was just troubled that a lot of teachers did not even use or turn on their technological devices in their classroom because they were afraid. But the only training that we received was a large professional development where someone stood up at the front, we all sat, kind of a sit and get. So I thought there has to be a better way. So I started to do some research on peer coaching. Peer coaching is that there's many definitions out there, but it's when peers engage in an observation and feedback cycle to learn from each other. If it's true peer coaching, it must have a clear purpose. You have to define your roles carefully and then provide clear feedback. And it should be non-evaluative, which is why it's peer coaching and not coaching from an administrator, right? It's peer to peer. So I also found that peer coaching allowed teachers to differentiate support with each other in specific areas of need. And it provided a higher level of accountability when you had someone that was checking in on you. And then in addition, provided a safe space for reflection and growth. Joyce and Showers are kind of the gurus of peer coaching and have a lot of research out there about it. And they said that peer coaching enhanced staff development efforts in a way that allowed teachers to implement new strategies that they maybe would not have been comfortable doing before. And then they also said that greater knowledge transfer occurs in teachers that are coached rather than just in a sit and get kind of professional development training. So with these two things, the technology integration and this knowledge of peer coaching, I began a research study. asking a few questions. My first question was, how could peer coaching foster integration of technology into teachers' lesson designs? How can peer coaching influence teachers who are reluctant to integrate technology when they're paired? Someone who's reluctant, we'll call them, was paired with someone who is more proficient as the coach. And then what are the benefits for the technology proficient teacher and the technology reluctant teacher throughout an 8-week coaching process? So I used a triangulation of data. So I engaged in 3-point interviews, observations of the peer coaching teams, and 2 focus groups throughout the research period. This multi-pronged approach was hopeful to give me the fullest picture of the perspectives of both the coaches and the participants. So the peer coaching pairs were identified using an adapted form of the Charlotte-Danielson framework. The Charlotte-Danielson framework is used generally in K through 12 for teacher evaluations, but they also have one available for technology. So I use that as an assessment tool to identify who's a coach and who is maybe more technology reluctant. Coaches met the proficient or distinguished in each category in order to be qualified as a coach. And participants all elected to participate, and that means both coaches and the peers or the participants. And they use the same tool at the beginning and end of the research period for self-evaluation. And coaches and participants were paired 1-to-1. So it was a 1-to-1 partnership. This kind of just gives you the scope and sequence of when things were conducted. We started with a large focus group, did individual interviews, did a lot of observations, and kind of moved through the cycle this way. So it was a busy time, but throughout this time, coaches and participants met with each other each week and worked on the specific technology integration learning goals that they developed together. So my findings were that peer coaching actually impacted more than just technology integration. There were 3 areas that it impacted: technology integration, confidence, and relational development. So it impacted technology integration in that all of the teachers reported that it fostered their integration in their lesson designs. And depending on their reluctance level, this looked different across each classroom, but they all demonstrated growth in the area of technology integration and grew in their knowledge and their skills. I also found that peer coaching impacted confidence. And if you were in a higher ed, teaching education program like I am, you know that confidence is half the battle for these teacher candidates that are learning to be teachers. So confidence is huge. Responses from participants indicated that they had a huge boost in confidence, and they were actually more willing to try new things at the conclusion of the 8-week program. So they had more of a growth mindset than they did at the beginning. And many continued meeting after the research period to continue developing their skills. Additionally, peer coaching impacted their relationships. So participants and coaches developed a safe and a working relationship where they felt like they could go and ask questions and receive positive and constructive and actionable feedback. And then they knew their participants well enough as coaches, so they knew how to instruct them. It was interesting because each pair had a different way of approaching things depending on the learning style and proficiency of these technology reluctant teachers. So this research was conducted before COVID, but I think it applies even more now. We were learning so many different things on our feet. And I'm sure that everyone had a different response and a different approach to that. So my thoughts were, peer coaching can be used as a means to implement new technology modalities and tools with less resistance from teachers. I think it's a lot easier to engage in something when you have someone to kind of pair up with to learn these new skills. And it also provides an opportunity for teachers with less years of experience to contribute to more experienced peers. I found that in these coaching pairs, sometimes you had someone with less years of teaching experience that was coaching someone who had been teaching for a long time, but they weren't as proficient. And so I think it allows that connection that we all miss in a normal way to happen. And then it also was a chance to cultivate and model growth mindset and grit for each other, for students. I think we've all had to kind of cultivate and embrace that in the past 2 years. and then helps keeps teachers connected with each other in a way that is more authentic than just through a screen. So my questions for you to reflect on today are, how could peer coaching help you in your discipline? How could you use it in whatever discipline that you are in, whether that's higher education or whatever subject level you engage in? And then what are the benefits of peer coaching as opposed to providing a mass technology training or in-service on something? What if we structured it differently so that we could form those relational connections and really make some lasting learning happen? How could peer coaching improve your work environment by enhancing buy-in for technology changes or other changes? So peer coaching can be used as a connection tool to promote changes, establish connections, and support each other in our forever changed world. As a result of my research, I'm now engaging in more research with my teacher candidates that I teach about the way to teach technology integration to teacher candidates. So I have some research going with some colleagues across several different institutions, and we're all instructing it in the same type of way. And then we'll administer a pre and post survey to kind of assess the effectiveness. So I'm sure you've all found that one block of research leads to another, but that's what I have for you today about peer coaching and technology integration. Thank you for listening. Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
How did you, you mentioned that with your peer coaching, you asked them to be non-evaluative.
Yeah.
How did you define that, and how did you coach them to be non-evaluative in their coaching to their person they were paired up with?
Yeah. So what I mean by non-evaluative is that it was not like a relationship where your administrator comes in and observes you and provides you feedback using the Charlotte Danielson framework. What I mean is that they weren't, giving each other a grade. Their, tenure status or teacher evaluation was not impacted. They were just seen as a peer and a friend. And so, while the technology reluctant teacher kind of had to do some self-assessing and say, okay, these are the areas that I really want to work on. They made a SMART goal together at the beginning of their time together, and then they used the SMART goal as a basis for the kind of their goal for each of their meetings. And then at the end of the research, again, it was more of like a self-reflection, but both acknowledged that there was growth, but there was no formal, I'm getting a grade on this from my peer, or they're going to tell my principal about this type of thing.